Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats as day 2 of our conference is about to begin. Once again, please take your seats as day 2 of our conference is about to begin now. Good morning. We are about to begin the program right now. Thank you. Now, please welcome to the stage NALEO President Luby Navarro and the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary to lead us in a military tribute.
Good morning. Buenos dias. I don't think we have the energy in the room we need today. Let me try that one more time. Good morning. Buenos dias, NALEO. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and buenos dias. Hello again, everyone, and thank you for that warm welcome this second day of NALEO. How's everybody feeling? Great. As we began a NALEO annual conference tradition in 2014, when we gathered that year in San Diego, California, at every conference, we take a moment to recognize the sacrifice of our American heroes who are served or are currently serving. To lead us in a salute of all of our service members, please help me welcome the following NALEO members to the stage who are next to me. U.S. Navy veteran, the Honorable Ron Garcia, local board member. U.S. Selective Service from California, U.S. Navy veteran, the Honorable, our very first Vice President, the Honorable E. Junior Maldonado from Hudson County Clerk, New Jersey. U.S. Coast Guard Reserve Petty Officer, the Honorable Carlos Tabon, former Rhode Island State Representative and U.S. Marine veteran. The Honorable Gilbert Villegas, Alderman, City of Chicago, Illinois. Thank you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let's get that coffee out there because we need to get some energy going. I am Junior Maldonado, Hudson County Clerk, and I'm welcoming you this morning. The teleprompter is not working here. Okay, thank you for that introduction, President Navarro. Of course, we know that behind every veteran's sacrifice is a family making one of their own. At this time, I would like to recognize all the Gold Star families in the room, families of fallen service members who died while serving our country during a time of conflict. To all our Gold Star family members, please stand. Let's give all of them a round of applause, please. Many blessings to you. Thank you.
We would also like to recognize the Blue Star families in the room, the families of service members who served or are serving our country during a time of conflict. We thank you, too, for your dedication to our nation. To our Blue Star family members, please stand if you are able. Let's give these families a round of applause as well. During the Armed Forces Medley, which is a collection of the official anthems of the 6 military uniformed services of the United States, we'd like to ask all veterans, active duty military service members, and their immediate family members who are able to stand and be recognized as the anthem of the military branch in which you served or have served is played.
Thank you, board members, for joining us on stage, and thank you all for your great service to our great nation. Good morning again and buenos dias for all of you that have joined us since we started the program. Buenos dias. To all of the conference attendees who have served, thank you for your dedication to our nation. And to all my fellow board members, thank you for your ongoing contributions to our country through your military service and ongoing public service. Let's give them a round of applause. Now, please welcome presenting sponsor representative Ms. Sandra Bonilla, Wells Fargo's private client financial advisor, who will provide us welcoming remarks. Welcome, Ms. Bonilla.
Buenos dias, mi gente. We at Wells Fargo are a proud sponsor and partner with NALEO. We're so excited for you to hear this morning's panel with all these phenomenal leaders that will be speaking today. As you know, and I may have met some of you early in April when I was at the Economic Mobility Policy Institute and spoke about the importance of financial health and security for you as individuals. We at Wells Fargo are proud to be at the forefront of NALEO's commitment to you as elected officials and continue to support your development in financial security and your journey towards financial freedom. We're excited for you to be here today because, as we know, the best investment that you can make is in yourselves. So we'll continue to be here all day to talk about your individual success. Come on over and let's talk about your individual journey. Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Bonilla, and thank you again for being our presenting sponsor, Wells Fargo, for your continued support of the NALEO Annual Conference. Before we begin breakfast plenary, I would like to thank you all for your overwhelmingly support of the NALEO Service Project. You see, thanks to you, we packed 600 health and hygiene kits on behalf of Violence Intervention Program, a nonprofit organization that brings Latina victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse across New York to safety. I want to take a moment of personal privilege to say that this is a project dear and near to my heart. You see, before you stands not a victim, but a survivor of domestic violence, not once as a child seeing my mother, but twice in my lifetime. But because of you, we need to give hope to women, and because of our service project that we completed, and I believe Arturo and Jose from State Farm told me yesterday that we broke a record. Your passion to help women across this community to support women who face violence every day was overwhelming. So let me give you a round of applause. And while the kits are already complete, we still encourage you to head to the Service Project Tower and fill out post-it note with the name of a Latina who has inspired you. Stick it to the corresponding panel of Service Tower so we can reflect on the important women in our lives. In addition to this year's service projects, the next plenary session is particularly meaningful to me because this conference marks the very first time in NALEO's history that our organization has had a Latina president and chair at the same time. Remember, everyone, when Latinas succeed, we all succeed. And on that note, please enjoy your breakfast as you join me in welcoming to the stage the moderator of our breakfast plenary, Latinas Leading Our Recovery. Let's give a huge round of applause to the Honorable Lorraine A. Cortez Vasquez, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Aging and the past NALEO Education Fund Board member. Welcome, Honorable.
Thank you so much.
The Honorable Sabina Matos, Lieutenant Governor, State of Rhode Island. Welcome to the stage. The Honorable Carinas Reyes, New York State Assembly Member, Chair of the New York State Puerto Rican and Hispanic Legislative Task Force. Ms. Rebecca Vargas, Head of the Diverse Segment Marketing, Wells Fargo. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos días. Todo el mundo tuvo un poquito de café? Okay, good. We want your attention because we have three phenomenal women who are going to share with you this morning. This conference, this particular moderating session is called Latinas Leading Our Recovery. It's something that comes natural to us. Latinas lead, Latinas recover, and Latinas build. This has been a pandemic, an unprecedented pandemic. And first of all, I'm glad that we are here in person.
Yes.
That we can touch people again and that we can be with each other. But this pandemic also brought a silver lining because it taught us to be innovative, nimble. We had to be extremely creative, something that Latinas do naturally.
Yeah.
But also we are creators and builders. You know, in the aging field, we really suffered a lot because not only were we isolated, but we were also having to come up with new ideas of how to provide services in a way that most of our services were congregate. And so I ask you, you know, you don't let a good pandemic go to waste, right? And you got to use every learning experience you can.
Yeah.
How has the pandemic changed the way you think? Post-pandemic, I hope. How has it changed the way you think? How has it changed the way you lead?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask each of you that same question. And then how do you conduct business differently? And what have you learned?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that question. Good morning. I'm so honored to have this opportunity to join all of you. I actually, when the pandemic started, I was the president of the Providence City Council at that time. And one of the biggest challenges that we had is how do we continue to conduct business for the city of Providence at that time while dealing with the pandemic at the same time. Something that I was already working on was to transition as much as possible the infrastructure of the Providence City Council to be electronic. So when the pandemic hit, actually, we were able to be the first municipality in Rhode Island that went online. We barely missed one meeting. We were able to switch right away. And of course, we also got the Zoom bomb because we were the first one to go online. But the pandemic showed me, and I learned a lot, how to be willing and able to move right away, to switch from the plans that I had, that I thought I was going to do, to move to something else fast. And something that worried me a lot at that time is we were in the middle of the census. And I was so afraid that the city of Providence that I represented at that time was going to be on the content. And I worked hard with my colleagues to make sure that we had strategies, working with organizations that were providing food for those that were unemployed, in making sure that at the same time, the staff of the City Council was very engaged in making sure that our population get counted. So I think part of my experience, even here in the United States, has been that. When I came here in '94 to New York City, I didn't speak the language, but I arrived on a Friday, and they already had a job for me on Monday. So I think that's kind of give you an idea what my life has been here in this country. You have to get going, switch from one thing to the next, get ready, and things are gonna, you have to think on your feet and get moving because that's the experience that I had arriving to the country, the experience that I had at the city council. And then during the pandemic, I became lieutenant governor. And thank you. I was appointed lieutenant governor during the pandemic, and then I have to switch right there from a city perspective of dealing with the pandemic to a statewide.
Right.
And then we were doing the vaccination with all the municipalities in the state of Rhode Island at that time. in order to respond.
Thank you so much. Assemblywoman, you were at the epicenter of the
Yes.
pandemic. New York was in the news every day.
Yeah.
What were some of the lessons you learned, and how has it changed you, and what you do differently? Because I think we got some great examples from the Lieutenant Governor.
New York was absolutely in the epicenter of the pandemic, but for me, even more so because, and many of you may know, but I'm a registered nurse.
Yes.
And thank you. And during the pandemic, I went back to work, and I was working in a Bronx hospital caring for COVID patients. And I mean, I think the pandemic has changed us all as leaders, but I have to say, as a practitioner, to experience something akin to a war zone in my very neighborhood is something that is life-shaking. It brought to light a lot of the disparities that we already knew existed in terms of healthcare and access, and all the disparate outcomes and access to resources that our communities face. And it was so glaring during that time that what it did is it recommitted me to the work of being an advocate for my community, first and foremost. Yeah. But I have to say, you know, during that time, I had to balance also, we were in the middle of session. Yeah. We hadn't passed our state budget yet. And the state had to shift very quickly. I mean, I remember us having to go up to Albany and introducing a law to allow for remote voting, something that we didn't have at the time in the state of New York. And, you know, being able to think quick on our feet, both the leadership in the Assembly and the Senate, but for us as well in serving our constituents, right? Because at that point, our doors were closed. How are we able to meet the needs of our constituents? I have a district office where we see 30, 40 people a day, a lot of housing issues, a lot of healthcare issues. One of the biggest things that we were dealing with during the pandemic was unemployment benefits. And our office had to very quickly create Google phone lines, disseminate information to our community so they were able to reach us. I mean, all of those changes taught us that, I think for most of us, the idea of video conferencing and Zoom meetings was something that was so far off. Yes. And it forced us to pivot very quickly. And we realized how capable we are as a society. And now I think that things are possible that perhaps I didn't think were possible before. So now when we come up with ideas in the legislature and people say, well, it's going to take 10, 15 years to implement, I say yes. Yeah. I'm sure we could do it quicker because we did it during COVID in a few weeks. So I think that's a critical lesson during that time.
I think that's an important point, and that's an important point for all of the people here that are listening about that are government officials or involved with government or corporate, the nimbleness, because people think that government was not going to shift. And it showed that government could respond and could respond well to a variety of people on a variety of needs. I mean, you both mentioned it was your operations, it was community, it was vaccines, it was teaching people new technologies. Yes. And so that was great. We always look at corporations as being the nimble innovators. How has the pandemic changed you and your business? And moving forward, what do you see the future?
So my experience is slightly different, and I'll explain why. I joined Wells Fargo in the middle of the pandemic. Oh. So if you ask me how did it impact me as a Latina, as a woman, I have like the first half of the pandemic and the second half of COVID, right? So in the first half of COVID, I was running a not-for-profit organization, a binational organization.
You know,
Thank you, everyone. There you go. Now you can listen to us.
There in the room. What we're going to do is lift our finger rather than shush people. I really want you to listen to these three phenomenal women. They are giving of their time to you. So please pay attention. These are kernels that you might not get otherwise. Go ahead, Rebecca, perdón.
Thank you. No, al contrario. So I was saying I joined Wells Fargo in the middle, so I'll quickly share the before and the after. So the before, I was running a not-for-profit organization from the US, but with operations in Mexico, Latin America, and obviously also here, focused on helping Latina youth. So, and I have to say, we were used to working with Zoom. Like I had launched this program 7 years before, so we were very used to working remotely. But what COVID did is that we quickly realized the need to quadruple the beneficiaries of our programs, because Latina women around the world and women in general around the world were affected significantly more than men. I mean, with the girls that we were supporting, we saw a lot more violence at home, a lot more issues at home, and they couldn't leave the home. Yeah. So we were there to provide education, guidance, support. Even if it was remote through Zoom, we quadrupled the number of beneficiaries. So that's in terms of what I was doing in the non-for-profit world. On a personal basis, which I think is the basis of who we are, on a personal basis, COVID was also the realization of what matters the most in life, right? I think it was a little bit of a switch or a reminder for all of us, hey, you spent many hours at work, but home is really what matters the most. So that's one. It was also a realization of the differences. I live in New York, I'm a New Yorker, so it was also a confirmation of the differences that we see in our city, places that were suffering a lot and places where frankly you saw emptiness on the streets, but not that much suffering. So that was that. And then personally, I had the greatest opportunity of visiting many national parks, but that's a different conversation. But if you ask me, how was your experience? I'll be honest in saying I had the blessing of learning a lot about our beautiful country, visiting many national parks. And then in terms of Wells Fargo, I think that when I joined Wells Fargo, I found a bank that was serving consumers in the middle of the pandemic. And regardless of the fact that we were all at home, we needed money, we had to buy food, so the bank was always there to support consumers. Our doors never closed, bankers were always serving, and we just continued to be there for our customers.
Great, thank you. You know, you each talked a little bit about community and building, right? And you talked about partnerships. In your own ways, you partnered with your other colleagues to make sure that you didn't close. You partnered so that your community can stay involved in and informed during the pandemic. And you were talking about all the partnerships you had when you were nonprofit. As Latinas, we are built to be in community. We are built for partnerships. As a matter of fact, some of us form these comadre groups. Yes. If you ask anybody, each one of us is a comadre to someone, you know, that that has no blood relation to us or anything. And so that is who we are, right? And you are the first. You've been barrier breakers. But there were many firsts before you also. And the glory is not to be the first. But the big glory is never to be the last, make sure you have pathways. Which brings me to, how do you create this spirit of comadre? How do you nurture other women? And then, who nurtured you?
That's a good question. So I have to say, for me, in my journey through community service and being elected office, I had great mentors and role models to look at. Women that in Rhode Island were breaking barriers in getting things done. When I got involved with politics at the beginning, it was as a volunteer for campaigns, other campaigns. And it was through the Rhode Island Latino Political Action Committee, and I believe former Secretary of State Nelly Gorbea may be in the room. She was one of the founding members of that organization. And it's her birthday, so if you see her, make sure you say happy birthday to Nelly, if you see her. But she, and Dr. Pablo Rodriguez, in the Bernal sister, were the founder of that organization. And that has been key for transforming the leadership of the Latino community in Rhode Island. And they created an organization that doesn't have ego within the organization. One of the rules, Dr. Pablo Rodriguez actually was the first president of the Real PAC, And the rules that they have is gotta be of only 2 years, and then you have another president. I believe Nelly Gorbea was the second president of the organization. That organization helped us build leadership in our community so much. When Nelly was president, she created the Civic Fund. And then also when my friend Melba de Peña was president, they created the Latina Leadership Institute. And that, we have been able to build like this sisterhood through the Latina Leadership Institute that has created so much leaders within Rhode Island. Right now we have Mayor Maria Rivera here from Central Falls. She's one of the graduates. We have Senator Cano also, he's another graduate. We have reps, members of the House, the Senate, at the local level. So having that network, that support of the Latina Leadership Institute has been key, because you know, you get together with people that understood your experience, and you know that you can call them for feedback and advice, or just when things are going crazy and you need to speak with someone.
I think one of the key things you said there was the no ego, that it is about service and it is about putting forth. Karines, I know you do this all the time, and I know that you do this particularly with young people. Tell me about your circle of comadres, which ones you've created and which ones created you.
Yeah, so I have a few circles of comadres. One, I think the one that kind of catapulted me to the role of running for public office was the nurses that I worked with, who were my supporters, my cheerleaders, and the people who funded my campaign when I decided to run for office, right? Not just the rank and file nurses, but the nurses union leadership, comprised of mostly women, were the people that were out there really telling me that I should run because they wanted a voice like mine, somebody who comes from labor, who's part of the workforce, who is a non-traditional background in politics to run for public office. So that it was one of my circle of comadres. But I think also in these spaces where we participate in conferences, there's plenty of folks like yourself, Lorraine, that we look up to, who have really paved the way for Latinas in the state of New York. Are folks that we look up to as well, that have formed a circle of comadres. And I actually have a few comadres chats, WhatsApp chats, where it's like 60 of us, and we really use it as a sounding board, not just to share information, like, hey, I'm having an event, y si aparecen todas, you know, and I think that's key, because sometimes this could be a very lonely, you know, leadership could be very lonely, and it's very lonely at the top. So it's always good to have people that are going to support you, who know you and will love you and support you through the good and the bad.
And tell you the truth.
And tell you the truth, because sometimes you need to hear the truth.
Right.
And I think that's important, and that's why it's important to have women around us. And one thing that I'll say, in the legislature this year, I know the Senate had the first all-female incoming class in 2020.
Yeah.
I know, that's amazing. And in the Assembly, we have a significant number of women. I'm actually the secretary of the Legislative Women's Caucus. And one thing that the dynamic that has changed is that we have more mothers that are in public office now, and mothers of young children. And a lot of them bring their babies to work. And we know that the halls of power were not built for women, and they were especially not built for mothers. So one thing that we do is support each other through that process, whether that's like, you have a hearing, I'm gonna watch the baby. You know, you could bring the babies play together, we take turns and really making sure that we're able to participate fully in our role as electeds, but also as mothers. And that's how we create a space where everybody's welcome and we're able to participate more fully.
And I'm sure that influences policy too.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that influences the way you think about policy, the way you think about structures. Like you just said, there's no room, you know.
We have made significant investment in childcare in the state of New York, and that has been because we have more women at the table.
Rebecca, ¿y tú? Your circle of comadres, those you created, those that created you. Share a little bit for all of us.
So I also have a few circles. I have circles professionally and kind of personally. So as part of the work that I used to do in the non-for-profit world, I created a network of Latina professionals in the world of STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. It's a network of thousands of women across 22 countries, all of them Latinas, but across 22 countries, women that are devoted, dedicated to help the next generation, which I think is very important. I think that we should create circles that help us progress, that gives us advice, friendship, but then I also think that as we get older and we earn experiences, we have the personal responsibility, professional responsibility to help the younger generations. So that's one circle that I have with the obvious multiple WhatsApp chats. So that's a group of Latino professionals in the world of STEM, all of them mentors who help high school girls. That's one circle. I also have a circle of immigrants. I am originally from Mexico. I was born and raised in Mexico, have been here for 24 years. So as a professional immigrant, we face particular challenges, right? As we try to build a name for ourselves in corporate America, there are unique challenges that only immigrants face, right? So that's another circle and another WhatsApp group where we all advise each other, we all share experiences, opportunities, and then within Wells Fargo, I also have multiple circles, particularly the Latino Employee Resource Network. I have members of the network here. It's like our Latina family within the company, right?
You bring your comadres with you.
Exactly. but I would say there are definitely the comadres.
Yeah.
But I believe that in order for us to advance as a community, we need to bring in also the compadres, and not only the comadres. And I also...
The men in the audience.
That's the man clapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is about Latinas, but with Latinas go a lot of Latino leadership, and we applaud you for yours, but we want to focus on these women's leadership.
Exactly. But I do think that if we partner with them, I mean, I do think that definitely the all girls, all women, only women is important. Yeah. That sisterhood that needs to happen, it's important, and we should nurture that, and we should teach the younger generations that, because sadly, I think sometimes women, we don't help each other. Sometimes we kind of
we don't
compete.
know. Yeah.
So I do think it's important to nurture that sisterhood and to teach the sisterhood. But again, I also think it's important to partner with the men. Yeah. And I also think it's important to open to women from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Personally, part of your question was who has helped you? Professionally, the women who have helped me the most in some cases have been non-Latinas, particularly Jewish women, American women. So I also think that we should broaden the comadres to other languages besides our language, Espanol.
Yeah, talking about broadening our community. The Latino community finds itself at this crossroads at this point. We're the largest growing. We're the largest growing in small businesses. Our economic standing is growing, ever so slowly, but nevertheless moving upward. And you see our influence in politics, in electoral office. You can see it around. And yet, at this point in time, we are facing a backlash of discrimination and commentary that we have not heard. Yo soy la más vieja aquí. So, and I can tell you, I've not heard this kind of language in about 30 years in my career, 30 or 40 years. And it is astonishing. So I say to you, I ask you, you are you're leaders, you're the cream of the crop. How is it that you could, what are you doing, in the face of this backlash? What are you doing to combat it? What are you doing to re-educate it? And then how are you mobilizing folks so that we do not lose the standing that we have fought for so long? So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go in reverse order,
Yeah.
okay?
Go ahead.
I'm going to start with Rebecca. And for the sake of time, we have 2 more questions, so.
So I'll be quick.
Yeah.
That's an amazing question and a critical question that all of us Latinos should really focus on at this point in time. And I see that happening in many parts of my life, professional, personal, etc. So I think that we should address it, at least in my case, I try to address it in 2 different ways. One is on a personal base, by always walked with chin up, very proud, which I've always done, but I think today more than ever, proud of my heritage, proud of my background, and proud of my accent, proud of who I am, and being very open and very vocal about the contributions that we Latinos have made to this country. We, along other groups, have built this country. So I think we need to continue to highlight those contributions. That's one. On a personal basis, be very vocal about it. And then professionally, within Wells Fargo, we have a commitment to help Latina small business owners. We know that Latinas are the driver of small businesses. Latinas have grown at a rate of 35% on small businesses versus 1%. Latinas are, in many cases, like many of you here, start their business with their own personal finances. So at Wells, we are committed with getting more bankers, more small business bankers that can speak nuestra lengua, que les pueden ayudar a abrir cuentas fáciles. So more small business bankers that speak our language, facilitating account opening, and also providing more digital services. But more importantly, also providing access to credit. And going back to the sisterhood and the networks, we have partnered with NASDAQ and we have partnered with CDFIs to provide Latina small business owners with the opportunity to have access to credit and also access to technical advice. So I think that that's, on the professional side, we should continue to help each other through the employee resource networks, also hold hands, highlight our contributions, serve our community with the best products and services, and then personally.
Assemblywoman,
I mean,
we face this in people do not think that we face this in New York.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to disabuse them of that. And also, how is it that we deal with this every day and how you've addressed it?
I mean, I have so much I can opine on this issue, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. One of the things that I do on a community level, because I have a district that's nearly 60% Latino, like many representatives in New York City have very heavily Latino or diverse districts. Discrimination is a two-way street. And what happens in our communities is that we dish it out as much as we receive it. And one of the things that we need to start doing within ourselves is really breaking down some of that and watching the language that we use. Because as somebody who's Afro-Latina, I can't tell you how much discrimination I've received from Latinos for being black, right? And I think we as a community won't get anywhere without coalition building.
Yeah.
We've seen it. We can't get anywhere without the African Americans. We can't get anywhere without the Asian community. And ultimately, a few years from now, we're going to be so intermixed that we're not going to be able to tell each other apart.
Here's one intermix.
So I think that one is being proud of who we are, but also knowing when we're occupying too much space and when we are being discriminatory towards others, and we should treat others how we expect to be treated. And I think ultimately, when people realize that you respect them, they respect you as well. There's a lot of layers to some of the hate crimes and issues that we're seeing. You know, the new influx of asylum seekers has turned a lot of Latinos into very discriminating voices.
Yeah.
So those are all, I think, issues that we need to manage within ourselves and have those very honest and earnest conversations amongst Latinos.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think crucial conversations are the most important.
Yeah.
Coupled with education. I remember once saying, ay, ya yo estoy cansada de enseñarle a tanta gente. But you know what? We can't never tire, you know. And so,
Yeah. So
in Rhode Island, I
yes,
could imagine.
and I have to say, what the Assemblywoman said is so true. Myself, I identified as Afro-Latina, and I have found discrimination within our own culture, within our Latinos. But last year, when I ran for the first time for the position of Lieutenant Governor statewide, the talk radio in Rhode Island spent every day attacking me, using dog whistles, like every possible thing they could say. They spent the 3 shows, the morning, the midday, and the afternoon show, trashing me, trashing me, trashing me. And right now, I'm running for Congress, and they're starting that again because they're not happy that I'm leading in the polls. And they are saying every single thing is like, oh, it looks like it's going to be her. I wish that the Speaker of the House would run so she doesn't. Why they have to be her? But through this process, what I have found, that the thing that gives me the drive to continue moving, is every time I go out and speak to a group of students at a school, one of the first experiences that I had after being appointed Lieutenant Governor was that going to one of the vaccination sites at one of the Boys and Girls Clubs, I was walking there, and as I was arriving, this group of young girls, mostly girls of color, got up and they started clapping. And I was looking around, what they're clapping for? And that day, I understood that me being in this position means so much to them. It's not about me, it's what it means to them. And even though it is hard for us to be in elected office and we have to deal, one of the things that I did is actually I took the Twitter app out of my phone so I don't keep looking at the negative things. But we have to remember that we are just opening the doors for the next generation. They're the ones that are going to finish the work. That's all we're doing. That once I understood that, I was able to deal with anything that came my way and continue moving forward, because at the end of the day, it's not about us. We're opening the door for the next generation.
Yeah, thank you for that. So thank you for giving me the segue. You know, as Commissioner of Aging, you know I'm going to talk about aging, right? So talking about generations, the Latino community, again, you know, we're a leader in so many ways, but we're also a leader in that we can set examples to how to handle this phenomena that's happening globally. The older population is growing exponentially, and the younger population is not. However, the younger population in the Latino community continues to grow. But in New York State, for example, by 2030, there will be more older people over the age of 60 than there will be young people under the age of 18. That's an incredible phenomenon. That means that we have to look at policies different. We have to look at our own ageism, talk about the isms that we face. You face Latino, Afro-Latina issues, ageism coupled with that. And we look at those issues, and I want you to think about what do we need to do as a community, because for us, kinship care is important. 1 out of every 9 children in public schools has an older adult as their primary caregiver. And yet we also have, as Latinas, this other thing that we have to handle, which is caregiving, all right? And so we are all caregivers, and most of it falls on women. Yeah. How is it that we can look at in our community and set some examples for balancing those two, but also for respecting and honoring our older adults the way we know we have to and the way society is not structured to do? So I'm going to turn that wonderful loaded question to each one of you and think about what are some of the ways that you're doing that legislatively, politically, structurally, and also you from a work environment, but both of you from a legislative and community perspective. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so housing has been an issue that I have worked closely with since I was at the local government in the city council, and now as Lieutenant Governor, I continue to push for housing in Rhode Island because I have seen firsthand, those of you that are in the local government, you are the first one to get a phone call when there is a fire and someone gets displaced, and they don't have a place to go. Or if the city condemns their property and they don't have a place to go. Most of the time, whenever we're trying to help those families, especially on the older population, I can tell you a good example that I faced with. It is a grandmother, had the custody of 2 granddaughters. The city condemns her property, right? She's displaced. The city puts her in a hotel for 1 week. When I'm trying to help her find a place to go, every time I call every agency that works with the homeless, and this is what I was faced with. She's really not a priority because she has a place to be. She's not on the street or she's not in a shelter. If she goes on the street or into a shelter, she's going to lose the custody of her 2 granddaughters. So we have to look at the complexity of the challenges that families are having right now, that more adults are taking care of their grandkids. Unfortunately, for many reasons, in many cases, it could be the child has been dealing with substance abuse, their son or daughters, and the grandparents end up taking care of them. And in many instances, those grandparents live on buildings that don't allow for children to be there. And this is an added stress level that is put on those grandparents and our aging population. So I think housing is one of the ways that I have been working really hard to address the challenges of our aging population. For me, everything goes back to housing. If we want to fix the education, making sure that our kids do better in school, if they're moving from one school district to the next every year or in the middle of the school year, they're not going to do well. So we have to make sure that we prioritize housing as the one thing that's going to stabilize everything.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point, because you can't do anything if you don't have a place to live. I mean, one of the issues that we're going to be facing with an aging population is that workforce need for the care that they're going to ultimately need as they age. One thing that we've done in New York is expand the CDPAP program, which allows for a family member to be paid through insurance or Medicaid to care for an individual and be their home care worker. Because one, in New York, we have a shortage of home care workers. The pay for home care workers is so low that once you calculate the hours, they're below minimum wage, and it's really proving to be a problem in terms of retaining that workforce. So the CDPAP program was something that in New York State we implemented to kind of mitigate a little bit of that. I think that it needs some regulations, though, because there has been a proliferation of a lot of these agencies, and there's a lot of abuse in it as well. But I think that's a creative way to really look at the workforce problem that we're going to have. And we can't just rely on a regular workforce, because it's going to be non-existent when the aging population surpasses the working age population. So I think that's really important. And as the population ages, we're going to see a strain on our healthcare budgets in the state. The Medicaid budget is always something that the biggest portion of our state budget is our Medicaid expenses, and making sure that people have access to care, but that the state remains fiscally sound is something that we contend with every single year, where we have to find cost savings, and we find cost savings on the back of sick people and older people. And the reality is that the more you limit their access to care, the sicker they will become, and the more expensive it becomes for the
Which is why New York, we're proposing a community care plan, which shifted away from institutional care, which is 4 times more expensive than a community care base.
Absolutely.
You know.
And similarly with making sure that we're able to keep seniors at home, right, as they age and not in an institution. It's part of, I believe it to be a more dignified way to age, but also it is a cost savings to the state.
And it's culturally syntonic
for us,
with who we are.
Right? Because
and with all the new immigrant groups coming in, there's a cultural affinity. It's a very different system than what it was before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's important, and just looking at how we're providing care to the aging population. They're the biggest consumers of Medicaid and Medicare, and it's a significant cost to states to care for your aging population. That's something we're going to have to contend with.
Just remember, we're all aging, so we're planning for we're all planning for our own future.
Yes.
In the corporate sector, there's also a role, right? There's a role for workplace, and there's a role for caregiving. What are some of the solutions that you have seen or have been recommending?
So there's definitely a role, and we are all definitely aging. So yes, very, very critical. And I think Latinos family, like as we age in a Latino family, we also age differently than in a different family, right? We were taught to take care of the elderly, which is also slightly different than in other countries, in other cultures, right? So I think it's important to continue to keep that culture. I personally think it's important to continue to take care of our elderly. And then what we do at Wells Fargo as a financial institution is, and you pointed out on this a little bit, it's critical for all of us to teach youth to save. The younger you start saving, the more money you'll have when you get to retirement, the more well-equipped you will be to go through your last years of life, right? So for us, it's important to provide financial guidance all the way from student accounts. So we offer student accounts. We have, for example, a site called College Steps. With College Steps, we provide high school students, college students, and their parents with the basics and not basics, advanced of financial guidance, so that they can start, since they are in high school, they can start saving. And then we also know that 4.6 million small businesses are created by one individual. So it's one individual who is the owner of the small business and most likely has a second job besides having the small business. That small business is going to provide the resources to care for the multi-generation living at home, right? So with that, at Wells, we also provide financial guidance for those small businesses, access to credit, and then from the foundation, we certainly also support real estate locations.
We, at AARP, we used to talk about financial security of an older adult, how you plan for it. You have to start younger. So all of you, you need to start now planning younger. And it's a three-legged stool, right? And one of those legs is very wobbly right now. And one of the leg is your Social Security, which will not sustain us. Most Latinas are impoverished because Social Security is their only source of income. The other one is pensions, and that's a little wobbly because less and less companies are providing pensions or 401ks, which might be a substitute for that. And then the third one is savings. And so that is really critical. And each one of us needs to start thinking about that, because we always think about that as something far off. And it is not far off, particularly in elected officials. You know, you have the ability to change the laws, but you also have the ability to benefit from those things that government provides. So I'm going to bring you back.
And I would just say, sorry for interrupting, in our community, the percentage of unbanked consumers, meaning people who do not have a bank account, is very high. When Latinos come from different countries, the immigrant Latinos, they don't come with bank accounts. They don't come with a culture of having a bank account. So we also have an initiative called the Banking Inclusion Initiative to facilitate account openings, because yes, we need to teach people to start saving as soon as possible, as early as possible.
We have a few minutes left. So I want to make sure that you are all leaders and have been barrier breakers and cracking ceilings and knocking down stones. I want to say, what would you say to the young Sabina? What lessons would you tell her, and what would you do differently? And then what would be the advice to those in the future? Karines, the same question, Rebecca, the same question. All right?
So I will say, I was very shy, believe it or not. And when I went to college, Rhode Island College, I didn't engage as much with any of the groups in college because I was new to the country. I just came to the United States in '94, started college in '96. So I will take the young Sabina to get more engaged with the college and in my peers. I wish I had that network with my college friends, but I was just shy. I will tell also to trust the process and that things are going to turn out okay, because sometimes we are our worst enemy. We are criticized of everything that we do. We don't think that, and people, society sometimes make us feel that we're not good enough, and we have to keep reminding ourselves that we are. And it's to the point, like, I have a book. It's a children's book in my office. The children's book says, I am enough. Just a reminder, right? Because everybody keeps telling us that you are not enough. In touching in the finances, one thing that I want to say my younger self is save. Yeah. Save and prepare yourself. Buy a home as soon as you can and make an investment, because that you're gonna be grateful that you did that. Yeah.
Karines, what would you say to the young Karines?
I mean, I made a lot of mistakes as a young woman. I was a very young mother. I would have told myself that I was enough, that I needed to slow down and pay more attention to myself and maybe not the boys, right? And I think that happens to a lot of women. And financially, I think also, I was in a relationship for many years where I endured a lot of financial abuse. And I think that hindered my ability to build kind of like that nest egg that I should have had at my age. So I think telling myself to put myself first, I think would be what I would tell my younger self, to invest in myself, not just my time, my resources, and usar la cabeza más and, focus on me, I think would be important. But as somebody who, like everyone, suffers from imposter syndrome, sometimes it's hard to see yourself anywhere higher, right? I often get the question, so what's next for you? What are you running for next? Yeah. And I till this day don't have that answer, right? So maybe as Latina women, we should not just acknowledge within ourselves that we're capable and that we deserve some of these higher positions, but also putting that as part of our plan and working towards it, I think is important.
Thank you so much. Rebecca, you can talk.
I think I would tell myself to start building those comadres circles and that networking sooner. Yeah. That is something, I'll be honest, I was on the other side. I was like, no boyfriends, school. Yeah. So I was the opposite a little bit. But the whole idea of networking, of sisterhood, of mentorship, of comadres, it's something that I've learned as I get older. So that's, I think, what I would do at a younger age.
So we've gotten 4 great kernels here. So, and I put up 5 fingers because I'm not a STEM person. The first one was, we got to eliminate that I'm not good enough, right? I'm not enough. Yeah. Trust me, I've had that for years. Yeah. We also have to look at that imposter syndrome. We are here, we belong here, we worked hard for each one of those positions that we have gotten. The other one thing is build communities, is what we do naturally, but build a community that serves us. Yeah. You know what? Because each one of you has indicated in your own way that it's lonely at the top. So might as well have your circle of comadres. And the other thing is to be true and authentic to who we are, but also to be reflective in terms of our own discrimination against others and even against our own peers. And so like to lead with the positive. So I'm going to have you, I want you to say 2 words that you want to say and influence this audience before we say goodbye.
These are the hardest questions.
2 words.
Just 2 words.
You can use 3.
I just have to say, believe in yourself. Yeah. Believe in yourself.
Yeah.
I would say do the right thing and work hard, and the rest will follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that, but I'll say something different. Pride and community. Let's be proud of our community.
Thank you very much. And I say, and I add to that, And my parting words to that is I would say add excellence, because these were 3 excellent panelists, 3 leaders. Congratulations, we ran out of time.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I didn't want to spend time on your bios because people could read that. I wanted people to know who you were. Felicidades, everyone. You can really enjoy the rest of your day, and you'll have the opportunity to just spend some time with these women. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before they exit stage, thank you, Commissioner Cortez Vázquez, for leading. If we could just have a moment of silence, please. Thank you, Commissioner Cortez Vázquez, for leading that discussion. And thank you once again for presenting sponsor Wells Fargo, for helping to make NALEO 40th Annual Conference a reality. Let's give these powerful Latinas a round of applause. I hope you all are having a wonderful morning, but before we wrap up this morning, I'd just like to take a moment to remind everyone about one of our NALEO pillars, which is right behind your badge, that we observe professional decorum and courtesy to all of our members and our guests. So take a look behind your badge as we move forward through the next few, today and tomorrow during the conference. I wanted to highlight the breakout sessions that are in store for you this wonderful day, starting at 10:30 till 11:30. These sessions are the opioid fentanyl crisis in schools, floods, the most common costly weather-related disaster, workforce development, local government is hiring, and electrification and growing alternative strengths. Make sure you download the conference app and read the session descriptions for more information. Finally, make sure you meet back here at noon for the National Leadership Luncheon and the Plenary America's Financial Outlook in the Global Economy. Thank you again. Enjoy day 2 of the NALEO 40th Annual Conference. See you later. Thank you.